Hi, this is Margaret Meloni, and welcome to the Death Dhamma podcast. Open and honest discussions with wise and skillful teachers about their experiences with life, death, and Buddhism. If you wonder how others on the path have dealt with death and dying and grief, then be sure to listen in. Everybody has a story, a perspective, and a valuable lesson to share. Embrace death, live a full life, and learn how to love impermanence. Because as my dear father used to say, nobody gets out of this alive. I sure hope you had an opportunity to listen to my discussion with Holly Hisamoto, because she is such a thoughtful and caring person. And when we spoke, she gave me so much of her time, and she really gave such careful consideration to the questions that I brought to her. And she brought better questions and responses back to me. And she really comes from a place of wanting to help others, and specifically in wanting to help others as we navigate death and dying. And absolutely, how fortunate the people who Holly worked with in her time in hospice, how fortunate were they? And how funny is it that as she and I discuss hospice, she turns the tables and asks me about my experience with hospice, which I wasn't expecting at all in our discussion. And I appreciate it. And when she did that, it reminded me of some things, of course. One of those things being that even though the first time I dealt with hospice, it's been several years, but that sometimes some of these emotions still come up. And if you listen to the episode, you can hear, because I didn't edit it out, I get a little emotional, and you can hear a little bit of the catching of the throat. You can hear my tears, I guess is what I'm saying to you. And that was such a good reminder, because when I do write about Death Dhamma and talk to people about dealing with grief, one of the things I like to remind all of us is there's no time limit. We don't know, and you feel how you feel, and it goes how it goes, and you might find yourself 8 or 9 years down the road talking to someone about something, and all of a sudden get that little catch in your throat. And you know what? It's okay, because this is all part of the honest process and the path of being a human being who sees others through their deaths, right? And also, it was a nice reminder, because if you are in a situation where you're needing to find hospice, do the research if you can, because we didn't. And the reason that we didn't, and it was naive of us, was that with my father, we had that great experience with this volunteer hospice group, and they were so wonderful and caring and loving. And when it was Ed's turn to be in hospice, well, we went with the organization that his doctor recommended, and I know she meant well, and I know that as far as she knew, this was a good organization, and I think that they were technically competent, but I would say that they weren't necessarily emotionally competent, might be the way to say it. And the employees didn't have the skills to help with the process of death and dying. And certainly they didn't have the skills that, we hear Holly, you can tell when Holly's speaking that she knows what to do, right? She knows how to help people through the dying process. And of course, it occurs to me that's partially because in the team that was working with us, they were mostly sending like nurses I don't know if they're completely RNs or not, but sending like nursing assistants. And although there was a chaplain, the chaplain wasn't checking in on us on a regular basis. And maybe that's also a function of being in a facility versus doing home hospice. So I want to throw that out there too, is because when Holly was speaking to us, she was working in a facility where people were there on site as opposed to hospice at home. So that could be part of it as well. But it is definitely a reminder that if you find yourself in that place where you're going to use hospice services, gosh, this is one of the most personal services we can have, the service to help us as we die and to be with us as our loved ones are dying. So if and when I ever need to do something like that over again, certainly I will spend a little bit more time making the selection and doing some interviewing if possible. Another thing that was so impressive to me in speaking with Holly is her openness of when her favorite aunt, committed suicide. And, Holly gives this statement. She says, "Death comes crashing in." And it's such an apt analogy of, here she was, this little girl in Alaska, and she's seeing the circle of life in terms of the animal kingdom, if you will, because there's a lot of hunting and fishing and going on. And she knows that these animals are alive at the beginning of the day. And then, if family members go out hunting and fishing and they bring them back dead, they're no longer alive. But she really makes an excellent point of the difference between that, but still living, in her house in a happy bubble. And then when her favorite aunt dies by suicide, death comes crashing in, and it's a whole other experience of, oh, so this death thing, this circle of life thing, this happens to all of us. Maybe not through suicide, but eventually we all are going to die. And that's difficult, as that had to be, my goodness. You can see how that created Holly, the grown woman who gets her master's in divinity and becomes this amazing, sensitive person who can help people and their family through their deaths, even as she may still carry, through her own discussion with me, I would say she says that there's still these layers of the family history of there having been suicides and this heaviness of grief and this these layers of grief and this heaviness of love for this person who has disappeared rather suddenly and in a difficult way, and how suicide informs a family history of always wondering, could things have been different, and what could have happened, and that awareness of being, of caring for the people around us. And, she mentions of the fact that when you see someone who you love commit suicide, what you may carry with you is this awareness of the inner life of people. Holly mentions the awareness of the inner life of people, and how she said to me that every person she meets, she's aware that what she's seeing is the tip of the iceberg for that person. And what a wonderful reminder. And there are different, you can find memes and, pictures and sayings out there in social media that remember, everyone we're meeting, we don't know the totality of what they're dealing with and what they're carrying around with them, which is another great reminder for the importance of us to be caring and compassionate to others. And even when we see someone who seems to be behaving badly, again, we don't know the burden that they're carrying, right? We know the burden that we're carrying. And that reminds me of something else that Holly really taught me, was in her work with the hospice, when she's helping the dying, that what really helped her do a loving and caring job of this was to develop clarity around how she's helping others set things down. And I guess another term we could use for setting things down is, she's helping someone else wrap up their life. And she learned quickly that it wasn't always as heavy or as difficult as she thought it might be, stepping into the role of being the death caretaker, if I can say it that way. And that helping someone prepare for their final moments is really about helping them let go, helping them set down the burdens, and so that they will be open. And that meant she needed to be open to whatever their heart needed, not necessarily what she needed or how she needed to navigate how others were dying. And she gives us some very helpful tips, such as reminding people of what they've accomplished and helping them let go of their regrets and helping them make final phone calls or write those important letters. And all of this really circled back around to teach me that in hospice work and in death awareness work, for some people, it's a job, but for some people, it's a calling. And for Holly, she was fulfilling a calling. And again, how fortunate the people who got to have the experience. And as we finish our discussion, she does share that one of the things that was really nice for her to experience is that death can sometimes be funny, and death can be joyful, and death can be beautiful. And as we wrap up our discussion, she shares the story of a beautiful death, which I'm not going to relay here because I want you to listen to Holly's discussion and hear her share it. So how fortunate to be able to speak with someone who has been doing the work and helping individuals and families. This has been the Death Dhamma podcast with Margaret Meloni. Thank you for being here. Your reviews and comments are greatly appreciated. And please come find me on margaretmeloni.com, MargaretMeloni. And don't forget to check out Carpooling with Death, How Living with Death Will Make You Stronger, Wiser, and Fearless, available in all your favorite formats over on Amazon. And most importantly, may you be well. May you be happy. May you be safe, at ease, and free from suffering. Bye for now.